Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So today I got a super fun and super exciting episode for you guys today because I am playing the full version of What If OutRun GB and it is out for everyone to play today. Maybe 6 months or so ago I did a preview on a demo build. Instead of the developer EG Vroom kept up with this pace and impressiveness, they'd have a very formidable version of OutRun on their hands. And I am happy to say today I don't throw the word perfect around all that often, but having played through this game more than once, I can say there's absolutely no notes I could possibly give the dev that would make this a better experience. It is shocking how well you can convert OutRun down to the Game Boy Color, keeping all of the gameplay and all of the challenge intact and making it look this good. Because trust me, the original OutRun arcade PCB has a hell of a lot more horsepower under the hood than something like the Game Boy Color does. This is not just an impressive port of OutRun to the Game Boy Color, it's just impressive Game Boy Color footage in and of itself. The speed sensation of the scrolling, all of the graphics and colors on screen, the branching pathways, this is absolutely one of the best looking and performing Game Boy Color games ever made, whether from the retail library or from fans after the fact when the system actually left retail store shelves. And the number one thing here is that the entirety of OutRun comes across on Game Boy Color. The challenge, the sensation of speed, the overall thrill. OutRun is still one of the best arcade racing games ever made, and OutRun 2 definitely is the best arcade racing game ever made, but somehow EG Vroom took the entirety of OutRun, brought it down to Game Boy Color, and kept every single fun thing about the game intact, while also basically just doing a showcase on what the Game Boy Color could do in competent hands. From the soundtrack to the controls to the traffic patterns to the branching pathways, everything from OutRun is just here. And trust me when I say, if this had actually come out back in the day, this would have been scoring 10 out of 10s in basically every single magazine out there, and I think would widely be considered one of the most impressive and best Game Boy Color games ever made. And that is how good this thing actually is. I can't state enough. I know you're watching footage. You have to play this game and you have to interact with it. It is just incredible how good it can be. You'll see there, even you get the actual flipping animations in the sprites on screen. There's so much attention to detail put in here. I will say the dithering patterns look absolutely incredible on the screen as well. But one of the most impressive things is you're getting out of the branching pathways in OutRun. This isn't just a point A to point B race with one set of courses and then you would leave the game. Although I couldn't fault the developer, if that's all they did, it would still be hyper impressive. You're going to get different courses depending on if you turn left and right once you actually get done with one area. And right now we've moved into Cloudy Mountain. So on this race, I'm basically taking all rights until the final stage, and then I'll show you a little bit of the other paths. So this game is absolutely loaded with content, as much as any OutRun game ever could, and it's impressive to see all that come across as well. Because again, if this is just basically a 5-course demo or a 5-course game, I would still say it's one of the best things on Game Boy Color. But the fact that you're going to get that map, and you're going to be able to jump in and race time and time again on different courses, making your own pathways up, is absolutely outstanding. And there is a full leaderboard as well. You're going to be able to enter your initials in and basically compete with other people on actual times. I would love to see this thing get speedrun by some great OutRun players and basically just see an online leaderboard, not in the game, but maybe just on a website where you can actually post screenshots of your times and have some sort of verification progress, because that would definitely be something that would give this game even more legs. Now graphically, I will say I absolutely love the colorways on show here as well. Those purples in the sky, those white fluffy clouds, the green of the actual grass on the side, as well as the trees and the tarmac, everything looks outstanding, and having those alternating color patterns in the grass really do give you an amazing sensation of speed. As you see them go by, you really do feel like you're doing 150-200 miles an hour in an open top Ferrari, because that's something that was probably very difficult, getting that actual sensation of speed to come across on Game Boy Color. So the overall graphical touches here were very intelligently designed to give you that sensation of moving this fast, even though you are playing on Game Boy Color. And we're not quite there yet, but I will say the music from OutRun comes across beautifully on Game Boy Color as well, because obviously just like the graphical prowess of the arcade PCB, the sound hardware on the Game Boy Color definitely isn't up to the job compared to that PCB, but damn it does it sound good. Go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll be right back with a lot more OutRun on Game Boy Color. I mean, obviously that's never going to sound as good as the arcade original or any of the other home console ports, but for Game Boy Color, a system that didn't have the best audio quality in the first place, it sounds absolutely spectacular because you don't just need to get the song to actually run on the hardware. You basically have to rework a little bit to work in conjunction with what the Game Boy Color can do and kind of work to its strengths and try to avoid its weaknesses. So I would say, even though the visuals are incredible, the controls are amazing, and the game is fun, some of the musical tracks coming over are some of the most impressive work, just because you can instantaneously recognize them as being from OutRun, but they also sound like they're a Game Boy Color version, because that's exactly what they are. And I even love the slight elevation change you get every once in a while in the road. It doesn't happen that often, but you kind of get the visual imagery of going over a hill or berm, and some of those things that I'm sure is very difficult to do on Game Boy Color as well. Now, things that you can't see, but I can explain to you, the control is absolutely spot on. If you end up crashing your car or you run into the back of some of that traffic, that's because you weren't paying attention or you didn't push the button in time. There's absolutely no latency whatsoever that's going to affect your gameplay, and you do see the traffic far enough in advance that you're actually able to avoid it if you're paying attention. Sometimes that traffic will stack up, and that's when it's going to be in hard mode, and you definitely can squeak past them or even in between them if you're careful. But one mistake and you're either going to lose all your speed or flip your car, and that's going to definitely be detrimental to seeing the end of this game. But as far as actually playing this, whether you're on something like Analogue Pocket, MiSTer FPGA, or even an original Game Boy Color, which I have not tested but assume works, you're going to get some great input, and that really matters, because it wouldn't matter how pretty this game is, it wouldn't matter how nice the colors are, it wouldn't matter the technical showcase achieved here if it didn't control and play well. And as far as the control, again, 10 out of 10. Really, I'm finding nothing about this experience to say I would improve. The only thing I would love to see is the developer take on Turbo OutRun next. But one more soundtrack sample, because again, this music is a 10 out of 10, and I'll be right back with more. Hopefully the second part of that soundtrack sample you're actually able to hear, because that song actually hits a flag sometimes, and not from Sega but from the cover band that actually now claims the ownership of it on YouTube, which absolutely drives me nuts but has nothing to do with this video. Just something I wanted to point out, how hard it can be sometimes to get some of these soundtrack samples through. But honestly, this is just a masterclass in caring about bringing an amazing game over to a new platform. I cover a lot of fan games on the channel, and it is quite rare that I say something is quote-unquote perfect. And I'm sure you're going to see something in this footage or play it and maybe not think or agree with me in the same manner. But honestly, as far as What If OutRun GB is concerned, I can't think of anything I would change about this game. I just want more of it. I want to see the developer do Turbo OutRun next. Hell, I want to see him try to do OutRun 2 on Game Boy Color, because if this is the level that they're able to achieve when they set their mind to doing something like this, I'm pretty sure every version of it would be spectacular in its own right. As we move into the desert here again, the dithering patterns just have such good looks to them. You really do feel like you're getting about as close to a gradient in the sky colors as you possibly could on Game Boy Color. And I can only imagine the amount of code and just coding trickery that had to go in to making something like OutRun run on Game Boy Color. Because if you think about all of the OutRun ports back in the day, all of them had some sort of sacrifices to them, and a lot of them weren't that much fun to play. And even though obviously this is much graphically inferior on paper to something like the arcade original, this just makes the Game Boy Color seem way more powerful than it ever was, and I am just amply straight up impressed. It is rare that somebody makes a game that just makes me think you did better than real developers back in the day did that were working for corporations. But What If OutRun GB beats basically 99 out of 100 Game Boy Color games, in my opinion, that were made by full development houses. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think. I would be curious to hear your feedback. But this one to me is just special. It's not just because I'm a massive OutRun fan who will use any excuse to talk about the franchise on the channel. I just love these fan games. I love when hardware is pushed to the limits, and I love when everything comes together to give you an experience that is just straight up special, and What If OutRun GB accomplishes all of those goals. But But we're done. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.